pupils, and welcome to the textbook and reading strategies video. In this video, I'm going to show you different tips and techniques with regards to readings, such as the textbook and the articles that are required for the class. Also, I apologize as it seems that one of my hands is distracted because my cat is currently distracting me right now, so I apologize. So you might be asking yourself, okay, this is an English class. I kind of knew what I signed up for. Essay writing and reading. Got it. Reading. Did that in first grade. While that is completely true and you are making a valid point, the reality that current adults face while attending college is that we need reading strategies because the course load and the amount of time available to us in the week just does not allow us to spend as much in-depth reading and time as we hypothetically would really want to. Consider this. For this class alone, that's approximately 3 to 4 units, you're expected to spend at least 9 hours a week, according to the Carnegie unit scale, on my class alone. Consider also the fact that in a 7-day week, we're looking at a total of 168 hours available. That's total. Now we're going to take the total number of hours available in those 7 days, 168, and subtract our sleeping time. So let's say you're a lucky human being that gets the 8 hours a day sleeping cycle. Most actually average about 6 to 7 hours, but let's say you're the lucky 8. So 8 hours a day, 7 days, we're looking at 56. So we take the total number of hours available in that week, 168, and subtract it by our sleep time, 56. From there, we're only left with about 112 hours a week to do whatever it may be that we need to do. So here's the other thing. According to a 2015 Georgetown University research study, the average student tends to take about 12 to 15 units every semester. 12 to 15 units is actually considered full-time. Additionally, students who attend college also tend to average about 30 hours a week with regards to their job or occupation. 25% of the total students that attend college, so that's 1 out of every 4 of you, are full-time in both school and occupation. So that means you are taking about 12 to 15 units every semester and you are working about 40 hours a week. That's 1 out of every 4 of you. So if you think about that, 40 hours a week for school and 40 hours a week approximately for, let's say, classes, you're looking at about an 80-hour work week. Let's go back to our original numbers here. We're looking at 112 hours available in a 7-day week. Let's take that and the 80 hours that are spent for school and occupation and divide them in order to figure out a percentage. So if we do that, we're looking at 71.4%. That means 1 out of every 4 of you, 25% of you, are spending 71.4% of your average week at work or at school, or working on either or. So, with regards to reading techniques, the reason why we're talking about them is because the reality of our situation is that we just don't have the time like we used to. Not only has the amount of time available decreased, but unfortunately, so has our attention spans. In Volume 2, Issue 1 of the ACM Transactions on the Web, in an article, Not Quite the Average, an empirical study of web use, the average attention span in 2015 was only about 8.25 seconds. 15 years ago in 2000, the average attention span was approximately 12 seconds. To kind of put it into context for you, the average attention span of a goldfish is 9 seconds. That means our attention span is less than that of a goldfish. So much so that while I was filming this video, I actually ended up picking up my cat and playing with her instead. So not only is our attention span worse than that of a goldfish, but it even affects the way we read and watch videos. For example, the average length watched of a single internet video tends to only be 2.7 minutes. When it comes to reading on the web, people generally stop after 111 words. 49% of them stop after 111 words. Additionally, because we are often distracted by so many other things, sometimes we don't even notice things in our surroundings. For example, did you happen to even notice that I put a dragon up on one of the bookshelves? Probably not, because you were distracted by my adorable kitty cat. But our reality is that we have less time and shorter attention spans than we used to. So we can either fight against this, or we can attempt to adapt and create tips and techniques that can help us in our current day and age. With that being said, the first thing that I would recommend doing is, for whatever you're reading in this class, be sure to turn down the brightness on your devices, or better yet, print it out. The next thing that I would recommend is determine your time and purpose. How much time do you have to devote to this project? And also, how much time do you have to devote to the reading versus writing your essays, drafting, peer workshops, or maybe other classes? The other thing that you want to do is determine your purpose. Why are you reading this? Are you reading it because you need to answer questions? Are you reading it because you just need to get the general information? Are you reading it because you're intending to use this for your essay? Each of those answers will require a different type of reading technique or skill that I will discuss in a minute. The first set of reading techniques that I'm going to be discussing are kind of generic ones. There are 5 different things to do while reading a text that can help ensure that you hit and understand the main points. The first thing that you want to do when reading a text is to preview it. So skim the material, look at the headings, look for bolded or italicized words, look for anything that might stand out. The second thing that you want to do is understand what the context is. So where was this story or article or essay originally published? Who wrote it? What's their background? Who would read something like this? Try to understand the context, and it would better allow you to understand the author's argument or purpose. The third thing that you want to do is to annotate. So annotate means to mark up and engage the text, highlight things, draw pictures, make notes to yourself. The level of annotation depends on you and your interpretation of the text. But the main thing is that you want to make little notes to yourself to remind yourself of what you were reading. Number 4, you want to make sure to summarize key points and ideas next to paragraphs. So instead of wasting time rereading or reskimming through an entire article, you want to create little point roadmaps for yourself, using maybe 3 to 5 words next to each paragraph describing the key idea or point of that paragraph. Lastly, you want to attempt to identify patterns in the writing. Do you notice them following the classical oration model of an intro paragraph, 3 body paragraphs, and a conclusion? What about the fact that every time they seem to incorporate the source, they tend to go on a tangent? Okay, so those techniques might work for general textbooks or perhaps easier reading, but what about the stuff that I'm going to be asking you to read in this class? What about those really long scholarly articles? Well, the good news is I've been doing this for a while now, and I have some tips and techniques that I can show you to help alleviate some of that time. The first thing that I would recommend doing is, especially when it comes to a scientific or medical study, they often come with what we call abstracts. So abstracts are almost like an IMDb summary of the entire text or essay. So the first thing that you want to do is read the abstract. In reading the abstract, you want to look for the argument. Where is the subject that they're talking about? What about their rationale for doing so? It also helps if you look for those Bloom's taxonomy verbs, things like argue, states, proves, explains. If you see any verbs like that, you know you're on the right track and are probably able to identify. What are you doing down there? Are you done? Are you good? Okay. In addition, the other thing that you want to do when reading any kind of scientific study is to go right to the background and the results section. The reason for this is oftentimes we'll read a scientific study that's about 20 pages long, only to get to the results section and realize that the entire hypothesis was completely disproven, and now you've just wasted time reading 20 pages of something that you can't even use. The other thing to keep in mind is that if you can't find the author's argument or purpose in their abstract, chances are you probably won't be able to find it in the rest of the essay either, or the article. So at that point, you want to go ahead and call it and give up and move on to the next one. When it comes to reading news articles or online articles, you're going to find the argument in a very different place. Because of our current reading habits, oftentimes when it comes to news articles, you won't actually find their main argument or purpose until about the third or fourth paragraph. The reason for this is because oftentimes with news articles, they have to spend about 2 to 3 paragraphs just providing background information and definitions with regards to the topic that they're discussing. The next technique and tip that I would recommend has to do with comprehension. So when it comes to reading these longer, more difficult articles, just try to understand enough. You don't have to understand everything, you just have to understand the gist of it. If you can do that, you're on the right track. Additionally, sometimes when we're reading something like philosophy, sentences can become very, very long and verbose to the point that we have no idea what the person is attempting to argue or articulate. If you ever find yourself reading philosophy or theory or anything like that, one of the techniques that I would recommend is the jumping technique. The jumping technique means that you can skip over chunks of information that are offset by series of commas. The last thing that I would recommend doing, especially for very long articles, is to make sure to jot down key ideas and phrases next to the body paragraphs. That way you don't waste time going back through rereading the entire article or rereading everything you may have marked. Rather, you go directly to the paragraph with the information that you need. The last thing that I would suggest has to do with sources. So if you happen to be reading an article that you really, really enjoy and they keep quoting from sources or materials that you're like, wow, that seems really interesting, or I might be able to use it, don't forget to go to their Works Cited page and look up the sources themselves. The benefit of that is not only does it broaden your own comprehension of the material that you're reading, but now you just got additional sources for that hypothetical essay that you might be working on. Last but not least, if you find yourself in a situation where you're trying to read something and it really doesn't make any sense, I highly recommend looking it up. We got Wikipedia, we have YouTube. There are so many things out there that help us understand the world. Why not use them? The only issue with using that material is if that's all you did. If all you did was read the Wikipedia article about this topic or subject, that's not quite doing your education or your brain justice. So keep that in mind. Absolutely seek out sources that are available to you, but don't forget to actually use those sources and combine them with the material that you're using. Well, class, that's all we have time for today. Thank you for your time and have a wonderful rest of your day.